first thing first, we need to open the door. You can do that by twisting the knob all the way to the left. Lift the door and latch it onto this lock here to secure the door. Then we can hop inside and get started. So, to start off, want to make sure that we have all our required documents. So, want to make sure we have our POH and the necessary supplements for our air brakes, as well as the registration, airworthiness, and weight and balance information for the aircraft, which can be found here. Right? Then we want to make sure we store those safely away, ensuring that the registration and the special airworthiness certificate are easily visible. I'm going to put that in the pocket right here, as well as that POH, right? Performance information for the aircraft should have already been done prior to here, and the control locks are removed, right? Now, first we want to ensure that the parking brake is on, right? You can do that by pulling up here to release it. You can do that by pulling up and pressing this pin. You want to be careful not to use one hand with this. There's a tendency where if you pull with one hand, you may pull it towards you and then this metal can bend. So I recommend pulling up with one hand, using your other hand to push the pin in to secure it. You can see that there are a couple latches right here on the pin. You want it to be fit in one of those little rivets there. I wouldn't even say a rivet, the little indentations there, right? So parking brake is on. We want to make sure that the fuel valve is open. So that's the closed position. Going to make sure that that is open. If you don't do that, when you do the sump, you may not be getting any fuel from it, right? The electrical, fuel, rods, and cables. Just want to check the cables for the rudder. Make sure that there's no breaking there on the cables. We're going to come up here and we're going to make sure that the rods, all of them, the bolts are secure on all the different rods and cables, including the electrical wires here that goes towards the wing to supply electrical current to all of the electrical equipment there, including the motors there for the air brakes. And we have here the different tubes for the pitot tube. This is the tube coming from the pitot tube to give airspeed information, and also the angle of attack indicator tube. And you'll see it's labeled there saying AOA, it's the yellow one. Red one is for the pitot tube, right? So I want to make sure none of that is broken. And we also want to check while we're here the parachute straps. Want to make sure that it's secure, it's not broken, and we have another one over here, right? Now to check the fuel, we can unlatch the seatbelt and pull this back of the seat off. We'll take the top off here as well. And we can see the fuel at the back of the pilot side seat, right? So this is the fuel tank, and you can see how much is in there. We also have some stuff in here. This will function as well as the bag for the baggage area as well. We have the prop covers. Later on, we're going to be burping the engine, which we're going to have to use the prop for that. If the prop is too harsh on your hands, we can use this to help us to make it not as aggressive on our hands or abrasive on our hands. We also have this in the baggage area, which is Declan. This should be added, around ½ ounce of it should be added to the fuel tank every time it is refilled, right? What this does is that it makes the lead in the fuel a little bit more volatile, make it a little bit easier to burn. So that will help less lead to get seeped into the oil. Because of the 100 low lead, some of that lead can tend to seep in the oil, and it makes the oil a lot more sludgy, right? That's why if you're using 100 low lead fuel, you will need to do an oil check every 50 hours, whereas if you're using MoGas with less lead, you would need to do the oil check the standard every 100 hours, right? But this doesn't make you not have to do that 50-hour check for the oil check with the 100 low lead. It just helps the spark plugs to be a little bit cleaner and helps that lead build up a little bit more. So it helps to burn that lead off, right? So to use this, you simply squeeze it, and when you squeeze it, it will be filling up in this small tank here. And you squeeze it until it gets to half ounce, and then you can open it and pour it into the tank. Once you fill up anything more than half tank, you want to be putting some Declan in there, right? So if you're filling up half tank or more, drop that in. Right, so I'll put that back here. Right where we're looking back here, we're just making sure how much the fuel quantity is, and we're making sure we don't smell any fuel scent. If we do smell fuel, that means there's a leak somewhere there. We wouldn't be flying. Right, so we're going to be putting this back on. Just put that back on the Velcro straps, and this is the seat belt. At least the shoulder harness part. So we're just going to put that over the seat and secure that there. Right. Next, we'll be turning on, making sure the mags are off. Very important. And we're going to talk a little bit more about why we want to ensure that that's off later on. Right. We want to make sure all the green electrical switches are off. The ELT, want to ensure that that is armed. The flight controls, want to check to make sure they're free and correct. We don't have a window here at the back of the aircraft, so it's good to check the elevator, especially when you're doing the pre-flight, because when you're doing the run-up, you may not be able to see it. So we want to move the flight controls all the way back, make sure the elevator is moving properly, and just go all the way around in a circular motion with the flight controls, making sure the elevator is moving accurately, the ailerons are moving accurately on both sides as well. Right? So flight controls are free and correct. All right. Now, it's important to note that when you're actually doing a flight, you'll never need that full range of the flight controls. When flying with this stick, you're going to be operating in this range here. So you're going to be fine. This is just to make sure that you do have full authority of the flight controls. Right? Circuit breakers, we want to make sure that they are checked in. Then we're going to turn the master and generator on. You could really just turn the master on, but we'll flip both of them on. The generator isn't on right now until the engine starts running. All right, so when you turn that on, the generator fail light should be verified that the generator fail light is on, right? So whether this is the generator is on or off, that will say that the generator fail light is on. It's just simply saying that there's no power being provided by the generator. So that makes sense. Want to make sure it's working. Once the PFD turns on, we want to check the database, so verify the database. Then you're going to click continue. Then we'll come over here and click the engine information. And we want to make sure the volts are between 12 and 14 volts on the voltmeter. Right? We also want to check the fuel gauges, so we can see that we have 6 gallons, and you'll verify that visually as we did earlier with the fuel tank in the back. I also like to click here, and I recommend going to the fuel remaining and making sure that you put the amount of fuel that is actually in the tank, so that the fuel totalizer can calculate how much fuel is used and how much fuel you have remaining as you go through the flight. So this is pretty accurate. So here the total gallons is 6 gallons, but what happened is that it's more of a rounding up because it's actually 5.5 gallons from the previous flight. and it rounds up to say it's 6. Right? So using a fuel totalizer is very helpful, especially on long flights. Right? Next, we want to make sure that we check the lights, we check the flaps, the air brakes, and this is going to be our first walk around. So we're going to turn the anti-collision and nav lights on. We're going to turn on the cockpit light, the landing light. We're going to be deploying the air brakes and putting the flaps all the way up by clicking this knob and bringing it all the way up. Right? So we can see here the cabin light is on, this red light here, and you can point it to wherever you want for those night flights. So that's good. I'm going to just turn that off, and then we're going to do a quick walk around. So this is going to be our first of the 3 walk arounds. We want to make sure that the air brakes have been deployed. Right? And I'll just unlatch this tie strap there as well. Want to ensure that the nav light and the strobes are working. And they're in one housing space, so it's not 2 separate things as you'd probably see with the Cessna. I'm going to unlatch this tie down. And here, I'm going to just bring the tail down here for a little bit. And you can see we have a strobe, probably a little bit hard to see, and the nav light, the white nav light, fused into one here. So you can see that there's a flashing white light, but then when the light isn't flashing, there's still a steady white light being on. So that's the strobe and the nav light. Put that back up. So that's working. And we'll come all the way around here. Air brake is deployed, and these air brakes function on 2 separate motors. So I want to make sure that both of them came up before we do go to fly. If the air brakes aren't working, it's not disqualifying that we can't fly. We just need to be cautious of that. You don't need the air brakes in order to fly. Then we come here, we have the green nav light and the strobe. I'm going to unlatch this here. And then at the front, we have the landing light. And that is working. Then we can go back inside, turn the lights off. So we'll turn the nav light off, landing light off. We'll close the air brake. And you know that the air brake is off because that light will come off. When the air brake is on, you'll see that red light come on, right? We're going to put it back to retract. Right? We'll leave the flaps up just so that we can see some components on it as we go around for now, but we'll retract that before our flight. Right? So next we want to note the Hobbs and tack time, which can be seen here. And you also want to note the amount of fuel that you have. We'll note that in our book, our logbook, saying fuel out, so that we can know when we need to put that additive to keep track of that. So now we will turn the master and battery off after noting those times. Then we'll go outside for our external pre-flight. Right. So for the external pre-flight, the pre-flight checklist has been complete. For the external pre-flight checklist, we'll do the walk around in the order that we need to, and then we'll use the checklist to verify that everything has been done. All right. So we will start here with the gasculator. So I'm going to grab the sump, and it may be positioned like this. You may find it in this position, which is fine. You just need to pull this out, twist it, and push it back in. And this is what you're going to be pushing up on the sump to test your fuel. So we're going to come here. This is the only drain on the entire aircraft. It's a gasculator. What a gasculator does, if you didn't know, it separates the water from fuel if there's any water or contaminants in there. The reason why this is the only drain there, we only have one fuel tank. This is the lowest point in the entire fuel system. So if there was any water in the fuel tank, eventually it would have drained to come to this point. So we're just going to push up firmly on the gascolator. We're going to ensure that there is no sediments, no water in there, and that it's clean. Then we'll take this and we'll put it in the blue tanks that we have scattered across our fleet. All right. So once we finish doing the gascolator, we can come to the brake, and you just want to make sure that the strut is secure. There's nothing here for your feet, but you just want to make sure that it is secure. You come here for the disc pads. You want to make sure that we do have disc pads there. It's not all grinded down, and there's no hydraulic fluid, which is still going to be a red color. There's no hydraulic fluid leaking from the brake lines. You'll notice here that we have a floating disc type brake for the Behringer brakes. So you'll see that as I press down here, this rotor is not attached to anything, right? It's a fixed caliper, meaning the disc pads are fixed, but the rotor is floating, right? So it's pretty much held together by this line here. And the purpose of this is to help with heat dissipation. Because it's not touching anything specifically, it does help to dissipate heat a lot better. And on top of that, it helps with the efficiency of the brake. What you can find sometimes with fixed brakes is that the disc pad will be touching this part of the rotor, but then the inside of the rotor that's connected to the wheel for the fixed brakes, for the fixed rotors, I should say, that will cause some difference in heat dissipation. Meaning where the pads are touching, that will be really hot, and the other parts where the pads aren't touching will be colder, and that may cause the metal to warp, because some parts are hot, expanding, some parts are cold and contracting, right? Or colder. With this floating brake, the pad is touching the entire rotor, right? So the entire rotor is going to be heated pretty much evenly, so there won't be any warping off the rotor. So we can ride the brakes a little bit more while not worrying too much about any warping or overheating happening. There's an important point to make from the POH, however. Above 1800 RPMs, if you are taxiing higher than 1800 RPMs and keeps engaging the brake, it may run the risk of overheating the brakes. But usually when you're taxiing, you're going to be a lot less than 1800. You're going to be pretty much taxiing idle. When you're landing, however, you'll be engaging the brake, the hand brake, because that's the only brake that is there. There's no brake for the pedals, as you saw when we look inside. But the Behringer brake should help to mitigate anything that in terms of overheating with that, right? Want to make sure we check the wheels, make sure that there's no bald spot. Feel free to move the aircraft forward. It's pretty light to move it by using here. I'll hold on to here, and you can push it forward with the brake off to check the wheels if you want to check underneath the wheel. Going to come along the wing, make sure that there's no dents on the wing surface, going all the way around. Then we get here to the flaperons, running the entire length of the entire trailing edge of the wing. We want to look here, we see these little red marks and holes. That's going to be a drain hole. We have a few drain holes scattered across the aircraft. This is in case there's any water that build up in there that can drain from those holes, right? So we're going to come all the way around. Here we have the temperature probe for the outside ear temperature. So we want to make sure that's secure. Then we have one of the first antennas, one of 6. This is for your comms. We have one for COM 1 and COM 2 underneath here. Underneath here, we also have our transponder fin, as usual. And here for the strut, you can also ensure that the bolts are secure. Right? While we're underneath here, we also have the static port. We have 2 static ports, one on this side, one on the other. You just want to make sure that it is clear, the hole is clear, not blocked. Coming up here, we don't need a dipstick because we can visually see the fuel. But what I like to do is just ensure that the cap, the fuel cap here, is securely tightened on the fuel tank, and the cap is vented. Right? We want to ensure that the covers for the parachute straps are secure. This here and over here as well. This is for the GPS. Want to make sure that that is still there. And we have an antenna over here for the ELT. When I'm looking at the wing here, and we're going to look on the other side as well, we'll see that there's some tape here from where the wings connect to the fuselage of the aircraft. This tape is glider tape. It doesn't come off very often, but over time you may have, because of air pressure, getting bunched up. If it does, you want to remove it and then replace it with new glider tape. More than likely, if you're flying with your instructor, you need your instructor. Just let your instructor know, they'll be able to bring that glider tape out. If you don't have this, however, it's fine. The aircraft will still fly fine. This is just to help it to be a little bit more aerodynamic, because if you can see here, probably a little bit hard to see, but there is a gap between where the wing connects to the fuselage right there. So we can get some interference drag as air passes through these 2 points. So this just helps to reduce drag. As you can see, the entire aircraft has very limited amount of rivets, making it very aerodynamic. So that glider tape just helps to increase that the aerodynamic quality of the aircraft. Coming along here, we want to ensure that we do have our tail hook. This is pretty securely tightened on the aircraft. But you want to make sure that our bolts are good for the rudder. And again, the glider tape here is in place. This will be a little bit harder to be removed by wind pressure. You probably have to replace the ones near the wings a little bit more often than you'll ever need to replace this here. Right? Moving around, you'll realize that we have fixed tabs here. It's not manual tabs for you to adjust. They're fixed tabs for the rudder and the elevator. For the trim, inside that electrical trim that we have, it's really a tension being set on the elevator. It's not a trim wheel that's moving up and down. We're going to pull this, be careful not to hit your eye on the VOR antenna, which is the other 2 antennas we have of our 6. So 1 and 2. This is not VOR 1 and VOR 2. This is just one VOR antenna. Right? So we're going to pull the tail down. I like to position my feet just below the tail here to ensure that it doesn't get scratched too much, and watch out for those fuel tanks. What we're checking here is, again, the glider tape. Make sure that we do have glider tape there. Want to make sure that this bolt is in and secure for the elevator, and the elevator is securely seated in this U-joint, right? Now, this won't shake out. What you're checking for when you're checking if the elevator is securely seated in the U-joint, you're checking to see if it was installed properly. It's not like you're going to fly and then this is just slowly going to be shaking out of the U-joint, but you'll see on the picture that when the elevator is just brought with the aircraft, it's separate. Now, this elevator is then bolted onto the vertical stabilizer and fitted in to this U-shaped joint that is also attached to the vertical stabilizer near the rudder, right? So that's just what you're looking for to ensure that it's fitted in properly. If it's not fitted in properly, you just want to call maintenance to help to let them make sure that they installed it properly. And because the aircraft is so light, one helpful thing that you can do with moving the tail up and down, and this is how you're going to be taxiing it or parking it, you can have your student sit in the front seat in the pilot side, and then you can move the tail down so that they can see what a tail strike would look like and how much the nose needs to be pitched up for a landing. Continuing along, we look underneath here. Here's our second static port. And here we have where the exhaust gas for the rocket, for the parachute, will be shooting out. This is a very delicate film, so you don't want to be making your student press hard on that. They should just be checking to ensure that it is clear. Right here is another drain hole for the aircraft, just in case there's any water that gets inside the airframe. And this is the breather tube for the fuel tanks that we have, right? Coming up here, we have the, this is where the parachute will be blasting out of. So you want to make sure that that is clear. And then moving along the flaperons here, want to check the drain hole as well here on the flaperon, right? So we can see right here, another drain hole. All drain holes will be circled by this red tape to make them easily identifiable. Continuing making sure that there's no dents on the wings, we come here to the pitot tube / angle of attack indicator. The first hole here is for the pitot tube. If you look underneath here, just underneath the pitot tube hole, there's another one. This is for the angle of attack indicator, as well as these other two small ones underneath here. Right? So basically the angle of attack indicator will judge the difference between these three holes to be able, the difference in pressure, to be able to tell how much you're pitching up, and then indicate that on the G3X. If we come all the way back here, there's another hole. That's your drain hole for the pitot tube, as standard with every pitot tube. Then we'll come here to the brakes again, same thing, making sure that there's no bald spot on the wheel. We have no leaking. Disc pads are good, and it's the same floating disc type brake with a fixed caliper, double puck caliper. Alright, while we're still down here, we'll just check the exhaust, make sure there's no cracks on the exhaust, make sure you have at least 4 fingers of extension on the strut, no bald spot on the tires, and if you come around here, we have a couple more breathers for you to see. So the purple breathers are usually for fuel, as you saw in near the tail there. This is for the fuel, a fuel breather for the carburetor, the one on the right, because we have 2 carburetors, and that is for the carburetor on the left. The blue breather is for the oil sump, the dry sump system for the oil. Right? So we can come up here, and then we can check the oil. So if you look in there, you want to check, make sure that you check the coolant bottle, the expansion tank, make sure it's at least the minimum. You can see it's all the way up to the max. Then we have the sump for the oil. You want to pull the cap off, put it inside here. You can take out the dipstick, and you want to see that the oil is in the middle of the dipstick there. If the oil is a little bit low, right now it's not, it's pretty high, what you'd have to do is what we call burping the engine. So get the extra oil that's been settled in the engine case all the way to the sump. So how you do that, you're going to make sure that the mags are off, as we checked earlier. Put your hand on the prop, and you're going to be moving the prop in the direction of rotation. Now, as you spin this, you'll feel some tension on the compression stroke. Whenever you feel that, just hold it there for a few seconds. Allow that pressure inside the cylinder to kind of ease away through the gaps in the cylinder. And then you slowly move it through. If you do it fast, it will still burp the engine, where you'll hear this toilet flushing sound. It's just it'll take a lot more turns. So when you get to the compression stroke, that's when the engine is pushing the oil out to the sump, and that's what we want to get an accurate reading on the sump. If you also move it too fast, it can pop on you, and you may hit your head just like that. I think I heard a gurgling. Yep, that was it. We take the dipstick out. You can see it's a lot higher than the middle where we had it before. Right, so the oil is checked. We check the prop, make sure that there's no dents. We want to make sure that the radiator is clear. This here, which is a service building for the aircraft, to make sure that it improves the engine cooling, make sure that's clear. The oil radiator is also clear. And then we got to our completion of our second walk around, and then the third walk around, we're just going to make sure that we completed everything. Locks, ropes, chocks, and gasculator is checked. Exhaust is checked. Fuel cap is secured. Seal skins and doors are secured. Hinges, bolts, and safety nuts are checked and secure. Parachute and the strap covers are secured. Flight controls are free and correct. The tires, brakes, and struts are good. The minimum oil and prop is good. We didn't check the drain holes here, which we have a drain hole right there, that red hole there, and one over there. Coolant expansion tank is good. Antennas, we check all 6 antennas. Air intake, breathers, and drain holes are checked. Pitot-static system, we have the pitot tube and the static ports were checked. And final walk around is complete. And that's the pre-flight.